welcome to the April VRHP webinar. We are lucky enough to have with us Sue Jones, the owner of HR4VR, and she has some great information for us in regards to hiring and onboarding seasonal workers. And so without further ado, we will turn it over to Sue.
Thanks, Dirk. I am excited to be here this morning. One of my favorite topics. I hardly ever get tired of talking about it, although I am running out of new things to share. So hopefully on this webinar, we'll get some good response and people will be able to provide some additional information as we go forward. So let's get started.
Yes, exciting.
All right. So I wanted to start with a slide to talk a little bit about this study from Leadership IQ. And I find it really interesting as we walk through this. What I'm learning, 46% of newly hired employees will fail within 18 months. When we look at that, when we think about people we're hiring, only 11% of newly hired employees' success is related to technical competence. So what that really means is really starting to hire more for skill or for attitude, not skill. If you think about this, of all the new hires, only 11% of their success was related to their skill set. The other 89% of new hires' success is related to these 4 points. And this is where I think it's important as you're starting to think about interviewing and hiring to really focus in on these areas. Coachability is key, right? Can they accept feedback? Are they open to constructive feedback? Are they learning from what you're providing them? Emotional intelligence is another one. You know, how well can they understand and manage their emotions? Are these people individuals who are going to blow up at the first sign of a stressful situation, or are they somebody that can kind of remain calm and keep things flowing even though it's in the midst of a lot of change? Motivation. Are they internally motivated? And this is a big area because we're asking for people to take initiative, to do the job, to look out, to be able to be aware of what might be coming. And so we want people who are really motivated. And then temperament. Do they have the right temperament for the job? So when you think about this, maybe if you're hiring a seasonal cleaner and you think about perhaps they missed something and it wasn't clean to the code and you need to call them back. How are they going to respond to that? Are they going to be okay? Are they going to get angry? What's their temperament? So as we go through this and as you start to think about the hiring you're doing, I really encourage you to focus on these 4 areas and really try to get into what are their inherent skill sets and their competencies versus the technical side. And I can't tell you enough. I'm sure you all see this in your business every day, right? Attitude is everything. And what's happened is we typically have gone out and hired for skill sets, making sure they know how to clean, making sure they understand what the tenants are, making sure that they really have the skill set behind them to do the job. What I'm saying is in this industry, and especially in the labor markets we're dealing with, we really want you to start thinking about getting people with the right attitude, the people that have the right culture fit with your organization. You can hire and find people with the right attitude, and then you can teach them the job. What I like to say, you can teach them the job, but you can't teach them what their parents didn't. And so those are the kinds of things we're talking about when you talk about attitude. Do they really understand what it means to be in a service industry, to be taking care of guests and taking care of other employees as well? In the fall of last year, VRHP did a salary survey, well, actually just kind of a survey around hiring and salary and different challenges with housekeeping and maintenance. And over the course of this last 6 months, I've been working with that data and sharing it a little bit in different presentations. If you're interested in more information on this, VRHP, we did a webinar on January 30th. Specifically on the data that came from the survey, and that's posted out on VRHP's YouTube channel. Basically, the survey went out to over 600 people. We had about 140 responses, and that was just about 25% response rate. And on the cuts that I'm going to be showing you today, I am working with a cut that I did of Florida and Alabama states because they were had the greatest response rate. So I thought it would be interesting to just show what one region was doing. When you look at this slide, what you're looking at is the blue bars represent everybody who participated in the survey. And this orange bar here represents Alabama and Florida. So what we're saying is that almost 43% of all the companies who responded were staffed at 90% last year. And Alabama and Florida were right along there. And then also we look at about another 20% were staffed between 70 and 100%. What I found really interesting is that over here, there are about 28% that were not short-staffed at all. So it's interesting as we look at the companies that were not short-staffed, what are the things that they were doing? And one of the key things these companies were doing, they had a really strong retention program in place to retain seasonal employees year over year. And the seasonal return rate within a lot of these companies was over 50%. If you're one of those companies, I'd love to talk to you more and learn about the things you're doing. If you're not, thinking about what are these companies doing that you could be doing to really increase your return rate year over year. When we look at some of the greatest challenges, and as I mentioned, I've been talking on this topic for quite a while, and we're seeing the same things. And with the economy, with the low economy, you know, it's getting your job out there in front of others and really trying to entice people to come to work for you. What we're seeing with these greatest challenges, this blue bar again represents fully staffed. What I did here then with this orange bar, I took another cut and said, of those companies who had greater than 50% of their seasonal workforce return, what are they seeing? And you can see here, 60% of the companies that had greater than 50% of a return rate are dealing with these limited labor pools. So they're finding ways to get in front of people and get them in the door. So between the limited labor pools, the next challenge that comes up is really the skilled labor. And that's a big one because we're not finding the skilled labor at the rate and at the pace we'd like. And this goes to really hiring for the attitude and starting to train and having programs in place to train your workers so you can develop that skill. Another challenge is work schedule. And really thinking about how can you be a little more flexible and adaptable with these work schedules, because it's about getting the people, and you may need to get one or two more people, but if you can adapt their schedules to your workplace, then you'll be covered. Commuting distance is another challenge. What I found very interesting as a key takeaway here is compensation isn't as much of a challenge, which indicates to me from this data that people are paying appropriately in their markets, that it's not compensation that's the issue. It's more around finding the people, getting the skilled labor, and finding the work schedules. So as we go through the presentation, I'll just share a little bit about these different data points. And again, encourage you, if you want the full presentation, either reach out to me or Dirk, or you can go out onto the YouTube and get that data as well. So let's talk a little bit about workforce planning. And what are you doing with your seasonal staffing? And I really like this slide because even though we talk about short term, we're also talking about looking at it from the long-term perspective. And as we're looking at that, thinking about what can we be doing to encourage people to retain with us year over year. So the first thing I recommend is really identifying, how many people do you need to hire? And when do you have to hire them to be able to meet your demand? You certainly aren't going to be able, if you're hiring 40 people for the season, you certainly don't need them all on Labor Day. And then again, all of them on Labor Day. There's going to be different ebbs and flows throughout your season. So really looking at your data and identifying when you need to hire and what type of employee. So when we talk about seasonal staffing, you can hire them full-time for the season, or you can hire them for part-time. And I really encourage people to think about the part-time workforce, because these are the individuals that probably have a little bit more time to put into second jobs. They're also individuals who are looking for a little more flexibility. And I know, Dirk, we were talking earlier, and you had a great example of this. I think that would be good if you could share that.
Yeah, absolutely. Several years ago, I was working in Park City for a company called Deer Valley Lodging, and I was sitting across my desk, and the HR manager showed up, and I told him that how many people I wanted, and that I wanted them all for 40 hours a week, and he looked at me and he said, "Dirk, you're not going to get it." He says the job market has changed, and you're not going to find the person that wants to work 40 hours. I said, "Yes, I will." And 2 weeks later, I was across from his desk saying, "I can't find anybody." And you are right. I'm eating crow now. And so it forever changed how I look at my staffing schedule. While I'm anxious to find those that are working 40 hours, I understand that I may have to reach out and get 2 or 3 part-time people to fill that time to be able to accomplish that. I learned that I have to look at the marketplace to see who's looking, and then adjust my hiring practices and my work schedule practices based on the people that are out there looking for employment.
Right.
Whether that's somebody who wants to work 2 days or somebody that wants to work 4 days, that's what I need to do to make sure I can get the people in to cover the work.
Yeah.
I recognize that as a part-time person, that means if I hire a part-time person, I got to hire another part-time person to cover the hours. And that's just the way it is based on who's walking in the door.
And that's a great point. I have found that you do have a lot of better dependability when you're giving people schedules that they want. And so if somebody is only available to work on Saturdays, then they're going to be working on those Saturdays because that's when you can depend upon them. And so really thinking about how can you factor in part-time workers into your seasonal staffing. This is another one, anticipating turnover. When you think about how many people you need to hire to meet demand, don't forget about turnover. You could have turnover. I mean, a lot of clients I work with have to hire 2 and even 3 housekeepers to be able to get through the entire season. So looking at that and thinking how many people actually fall out during your training. When you're training people, if you have people who are falling out and not making it through the training, or you have people who get through the first couple of weeks and decide it's not the job for them. The other thing is if you're hiring a lot of college students typically go back to school before your seasons end. So just planning for that ebb and flow and making sure that you are over hiring to account for the turnover that you may experience during your season. This piece, understanding lead times. How much time do you need to fill the pipeline for your peak seasons? And this really goes back to identifying your demand and when you need those individuals. If it's going to take you 2 weeks to get people in the door, then that's your lead time. However, thinking about the recruitment process, going through the interviewing, getting the paperwork done, your lead time's probably going to be a little more towards 4 or 6 weeks. What you don't want to be doing is hiring housekeepers in February to begin starting in May. You'll probably lose a lot of them. So timing is really important, making sure that you understand what that lead time is so that you have the right person at the right time to be able to go in and do your turns. I am speaking a lot towards housekeepers, but this also is very relevant to any seasonal regular hire, especially your maintenance techs as well.
Hey, Sue, can I circle back to your first bullet point there, the full-time,
Yes.
part-time piece?
Mm-hmm.
I found that if I have a really good candidate walk in the door and they can only work for me from say like 3 to 7 in the evening, I will say yes to that candidate just because that means they can do a clean. They can't do back-to-backs for sure, but they can at least clean one that I don't have to clean the next day. And so we
Yes.
start looking at this at the people walking in the door to make sure I can fit them into my jigsaw puzzle of the cleaning and the work that I need to do. So don't, I guess what I'm saying is don't we shouldn't be so pigeonholed into I can only work from 8 to 5 and they have to work. We need to have our eyes open to a good person that walks in the door to make sure we can find a way to have them help us accomplish our responsibility and take care of the work.
Absolutely, especially in this economy with this unemployment. Anytime you find somebody that can add value to your business, let's find a way to get them in the door.
Yeah, yeah.
So as you're looking at identifying your staffing model, you're looking at your lead times and that, then thinking about what are the kinds of workers you need? What's your staffing model? Are you hiring only employees? Do you have a mix of employees and independent contractors? Or even, are you working with just independent contractors or staffing agencies and subcontractors? I spent a lot of my years in HR and manufacturing, and we did a lot of scheduling. And what I found to be really helpful is thinking about level scheduling and having the resources and having the team in place to account for 80% of the production. So what that meant is when we would have peak periods, I'd have to bring in teams to help to get us that additional 20%. And we worked with different types of staffing agencies or contractors or employees. So as you look at your model, if you have employees and you're hiring temporary employees during the summer, that's great. If you're hiring independent contractors, again, beware that there are a lot of issues with how you classify employees and independent contractors, and misclassification occurs a lot where the IRS and the Department of Labor will step in and say, you've inappropriately classified this person, and there can be fines associated with that. Staffing agencies and subcontractors, again, are a great resource, but there's also this joint employment piece. So you want to be really clear about what the type of worker is and how you're going to be using them. Just one more piece on independent contractors. Here's a couple of things that I come across that are, I consider, great tips, especially for avoiding a misclassification. Everyone should have an independent contractor agreement with any independent contractor you're doing business with. And that agreement should be really specific and clear and identify the outcomes, not telling them how they're going to do it, but identifying what the outcomes are of the engagement with this individual contractor.
And Sue, I also think in addition to the outcomes, it needs to outline what's going to happen if those outcomes are not met.
Absolutely.
Does the person come back? Is there a financial penalty? So that agreement is established up front. So when they receive a phone call saying, "Hey, this is substandard," the structure is already in place of how that's going to be handled between me as the property management company and them as the independent contractor.
Great, absolutely. The other piece is you want your independent contractors to provide you with the invoice, right? You want them to outline their hours worked or their deliverables versus paying your independent contractor the same amount on a set schedule. Where this could come into play is, let's say you have an independent contractor assigned to clean 3 homes, and they're the same 3 homes every week. And those 3 homes have a piece rate of, let's say, $125. You do not automatically want to cut them a check every week for $375. You want them to invoice you. The next piece is making sure that you provide independent contractors with that you don't provide independent contractors with company email addresses, business cards, keys, logo wares. This is becoming a little bit more problematic, especially in the era of guests and homeowners, employees feeling safe in homes. People typically like to be able to know who's knocking on their door. So if you have an independent contractor who's doing some maintenance for you and the guest is in the house, you really don't want them showing up with your logoed shirt and your name tags. So some things that clients are doing are calling ahead and letting the guests know that somebody will be there and this is their name. So again, if you have independent contractors working with you and they're wearing your logos or they're wearing your hats and things, be very cognizant that that could look like they could be an employee for your business. All right, let's talk about what are some things you can do in these limited labor pools. And you have to make it easy for applicants to find you. So thinking about lately, I actually live in Bend, Oregon, and I was downtown walking around the other day, and I think I saw 6 different help wanted signs posted in the windows. Now, when you think about that, who's going to see that? Well, maybe guests, maybe employees, other people, but it's another visible way to be in front of people. If you are online, making sure that they can find you easily, that they understand the name of your company. If you're at job fairs and that, have something that stands out so people know where you're at. Communication needs to be really simple and seamless. Lots of emails back and forth or lots of texts back and forth talking about jobs or talking about paperwork or, asking questions. Things tend to be lost. And you want to make the hiring processes as quick as possible so that you can get the people in the door. When you think about websites, and most companies have very dynamic websites. And the thing I wanted to share with you here, in a recent survey that I read, it said that more than about 30% of people were spending over half a day on their mobile device looking for jobs, and 15% of people looking for a job are spending more than an hour a day on their mobile device. And this isn't an hour a day solid. It's like 5 minutes. They see something pop up on Facebook and they see a job and they apply. So they're constantly glued to these phones, and you want to make sure that your communication is really tuned to that so that they can easily apply, find out information about your company, and provide necessary information. Now, I'm from HR, so saying removing obstacles to rehiring is really around, when you think about all of the paperwork, when you think about what it takes to hire somebody, you've got applications, you've got, resumes, you've got background checks, you've got I-9s, W-4s, you've got all kinds of, emergency information. So what I'm talking about here is really trying to find ways to streamline things. And when you look at some of the bureaucracy of some of the repetitious paperwork, make it easy for your returning seasonal staff. If you've got the information, pre-populate forms and give it to them to just verify. Do whatever you can to make that process simpler and easier for them. Another area, and this is obviously a big strategy, is becoming that employer of choice. People want to work for companies that are known in their communities. They want to work for companies that give back to the communities that they work and live in. And so becoming an employer of choice, it's pretty easy to say, gosh, we were rated the top 10 companies to work for in North Carolina in the last year. We're the employer of choice in this area. So those are things that you can do that are going to start to draw people to you. So just a little bit about being an employer of choice. There's lots of things that contribute to this, but it really talks about the pay and benefits, the leadership and the culture of the company. People want to know that they're working for a company that has the same values and beliefs that they do. Even if it's part-time, they want to know that they're going to be treated with the same, respect. Communication is really important. How do you keep in communication? And then, thinking about what are the perks and the benefits you provide. Do you provide lunches during the week? Do you bring in popsicles? Do you give them cooling gels? Do you give them sunscreen or sunglasses? What are some of the perks that you provide to your employees that go above and beyond what other companies are doing? By improving your employer choice, it's going to increase your applicant pool, and this is what starts to differentiate you from other employers. So you really want to think about what makes you stand out from the other 5, 10, or 15 companies that are up and down the main street with you. This is where you really want to think about what's special to you and your business, and how can you communicate that to employees that, future employees you want to come work for you. Finding workers in low unemployment, it's a challenge. You definitely want to make sure that you have your jobs posted on your website. I think that's certainly a key area. The biggest thing that is going to help you in this economy is word of mouth. And employee referrals are huge. And we'll talk a little bit about that on this next slide. But a really important piece is testimonials. How many of you think about testimonials you get from employees, but start putting that in your marketing material. Start putting it on your website, on Facebook, LinkedIn, social media postings. Say, hey, here's why Sue loves working for us. You know, here's what Dirk had to say about, you know, last week. But start using employee testimonials as a way of spreading things word of mouth. Social networking sites are big. Again, I think a lot of companies are using these, and they're huge for recruiting, from the standpoint that if you put something out on your network, people then can pick up on it and share it. And so it just becomes, you know, a little more viral. You're getting out to more people. Job fairs are another great area for finding seasonal workers. And when you're going to job fairs, really looking at a lot of different ones, lots of times cities will have them. There will be some through workforce development, but finding the job fairs that are bringing the people to you so that you have an opportunity to be in front of them. To kind of put what else, oh, go ahead.
So I was going to say on the job fairs, you know, sometimes I would go and just find the one person or two people that I needed, even though I was there for several hours. I still found that it was worth it because I got to see who was there and see the type of people walking through and see what they were interested in. So it gave me a chance to evaluate what I was offering and what I was providing against the people that were walking past. And so I found it just a great treasure trove of information about the candidates at that particular fair, as well as what's happening in the job seekers place, you know, to know what's going on.
It's great. And you know, seeing people, interacting with them face to face is really big. I have a bullet on here, kind of what else. I'd like you to think about that as we go through this. But as you have information or things that you're doing, please feel free to share those with us so that we can get the information out and, you know, give more ideas to others, especially on this webinar.
Yeah, for sure. On the right-hand side in your control panel, there's a chat box. You can certainly type in a message there, or type in a question, or type in a response to Sue's question there of what you're doing to find workers. You know, the best thing about the industry we're in is the rising tide lifts all boats. So we can help each other out here with different ideas and different thoughts.
So here's another slide that came out of the survey. And again, the blue slide represents the blue slide represents actually companies that were fully staffed. The orange represents companies that had a greater than 50% return. And then our gray bar represents Alabama and Florida. Look at this. If you look at companies that had a greater than 50% return rate of seasonal employees, employee referrals are driving that business. Employee referrals are a huge asset to you in your business in finding new employees. And that is by far the greatest method too for hiring workers for companies that are fully staffed. Job posting websites. This was interesting. Companies that had a greater return are doing more posting on the websites. And when I talk about the job posting websites here, I'm talking about your LinkedIn, your Craigslist, you know, the local job postings. But these are kind of the Indeeds, those things. Social media. Social media is another big one with the company that has this 50% return rate. And I like to focus on that because imagine in your business, if you could have at least 50% or more of your workers returning year over year, I would imagine that would be pretty successful. This next one is newspaper ads, and I'm seeing a resurgence in this, especially in more remote areas. As I mentioned, I live in Oregon, out on the Oregon coast, lots of little coffee shops. There's lots of little local newspapers and rags that people leave around in the coffee shops. that's where they're finding workers. So if you haven't used newspapers ads in a while, it may be something that you might want to try again and see if that might help you in your recruitment efforts. Teachers continue to be an underutilized resource for this industry. More and more clients that I talk to are fanning out even further, up to 60 to 90 miles away, and reaching out to school districts to get teachers to come. They're always looking for additional income, and they're off during the summer. So working a couple days on a weekend is appealing for the amount of income that they can earn. Local colleges and schools, and then military bases. So again, you can look and see some of these things and kind of benchmark against what you're doing if there's an opportunity for you to start to focus in on one of these other areas. So employee referrals. 61% of employees have referred at least one employee, and research tells us that at least, most have referred multiple people. And the key to a successful employee referral bonus is incentivizing the employee, right? Giving them something for their referral increases your success rates. And when you think about the cost to hire and the cost to terminate, I've done a lot of research on that. And let's just say for a seasonal worker and you're going to cost of hire and turnover, let's just say it's going to cost you $1,000 by the time you're through with everything and by the time you actually have everybody go through the season and turnover. So if it's going to cost you $1,000 in cost of hire and termination, then giving somebody $100 for sending someone your way is significant. So I really encourage you to think about making it a significant amount that people would see in their paycheck and go, okay, this is worth my time to reach out. And then engage your employees and encourage referrals. The programs need to be really proactive, simple, and quick. And what I mean by proactive is if you're looking for seasonal, let's say you're looking for some maintenance technicians and you want them for the season. Don't go out in January with the employee referral for maintenance technicians because it's too far away. So what you would want to do is get your employee referral out about 2 months before the hiring need is there so that it's very timely. And by simple, I mean keep it very simple. They come, they work for us, they're employed. After they've been here for 30 days, you get your $100. You want to make the incentive relatively simple and the payout quick so that people will continue to do this. Oh, look at this. Here we go.
Yeah, me and my microbes. I love my little microbes, my friends that travel all over with me. So again, as you start to look at the market and as you start to look at your staffing and who's going to fill those positions, this is a list of different areas that you certainly look at. I mean, we've talked a lot about teachers, janitors fall into that case. There are some administrative people at the schools. And again, when you put a flyer there, you want to speak their language. So you want to talk about, the new roof or pay off the student debt or pay for or save for that vacation. You want to talk to whatever they're looking for. And then the other one is hospitals. Again, they work, 312s or 410s. And so they have some time to do that. The challenge may be that they can only work half of the time you need them. So if you've got, 16 Saturdays that you need covered and they can only work 8 of those, I would still say yes. And then I would find a way to cover those other 8 Saturdays, just to make sure that I've got the people on hand. Churches is another good spot. The churches, the pastors are going to know who the people are that are underemployed or that have part-time work and are in need of some help. Because if the church is providing assistance, then for sure the pastor is going to say, hey, these people are hiring. They would certainly be able to help you out. And some churches actually have an employment agency that you can go in and talk to and help, and they'll help you find people to fill your positions. There's lots of state agencies out there. Again, this depends on your state. And as I think of this one, I'm thinking specifically of deaf people and blind people. Just because they're legally blind doesn't mean they can't see. There's all sorts of variations of blind. And so being able to work in a laundry, I mean, if I can put some of this class of people in my laundry, then I can take the laundry people and slide them over to the housekeeper side or the maintenance side or the houseman side, whatever the case may be. And so I certainly have all these things to move forward with on that. And then high school students. Again, some students want to come work for the money over the summer. They can work after school. They, uh, whatever you have, they may be able to fit that need. Now, again, when you hire a high school student, there's all sorts of rules and guidelines and policies that you have to work with. You know, they can only work so many hours, and they have to be done by a certain time on a school night. At the same time, if you're looking for somebody to answer your phones or to pack linens or to do some of those remedial tasks, that's a great spot to be. And high school counselors are going to know who the good eggs are in the high school and who can help you with that. And then the last one there is troubled teens. And so I'm not talking about those that are on the street and looking. I'm talking about those that some states have an agency that helps troubled teens get their GED, get back on their feet with their job search skills and so forth. And so again, they are looking for simple tasks, simple repetitive items that can be done. And the best thing about, or one of the good things about the troubled teen slide or idea and the state agency ideas is there are incentives from the state to not only train but to hire and to and in some cases actually pay their wage. So it's almost free labor in many ways. And so looking at what you have available in your area is so important. And again, coming back to the troubled teens, if you do look at that particular area for staffing, understand that what you tell them to do is exactly what they will do. There will be no deviation. So if you say, you know, scrub this black floor, this black concrete floor until it is white, that is what they will do. And so you have to make sure as you provide instructions that you're providing them in a way, and check back with them frequently, because, and that's true for all staff, to make sure that they're understanding the task and they're able to do that. Again, look at the market, look at your area, and be unconventional in where you look. Because again, I'm after onesies and twosies here and there, and eventually I'll have the staff that I need. And so don't always look in the same spot. You want to change how you look and change where you're looking to do that. And if something didn't work this year, try it again next year. Or if something worked last year, it may not be working this year. So again, the unconventional thoughts of where am I going to be and what am I going to do, you know, along some of these lines here are good places to look.
And these are great things because they are resources, and you have these agencies and things working with you. So thanks, Dirk. The other piece I wanted to talk to you about a little bit is employment applications, and making sure as you are hiring your employees that you have them complete an application. And the reason for this is it really provides you with the legal protection in the hiring process. Most states are employer at will, and most applications have that information. There's also something on there that kind of attests to truthful statements so that they're providing you with truthful information. And if you do pre-employment background checks, which I feel, you know, most of the clients I work with are doing for housekeeping and seasonal workers, there's a consent for pre-employment. Employment applications also provide you with some key information. They share, you know, some of the dates of employment for other companies, reasons for leaving, the work schedule they're looking for, what their prior salaries were. And a lot of applications have had whether they have been involved with a misdemeanor or a felony. And I wanted to caution you on that. A lot of states now have been putting into place what's called ban the box, and they are setting mandates that you can no longer ask if it's if they have a misdemeanor or a felony. That needs to be removed from the application, as well as salary. Our states are now coming in saying that they don't want people discriminating against individuals because of salaries that they may be earning or what they're looking for. So if your applications have questions on there regarding what their current salaries are, or if they've been involved in misdemeanors or felonies, check with your state to see if it's still legal to do so. And if not, make sure that you do remove those. You certainly can talk to these things during interviews. And if you have any questions on those 2 bullet points, feel free to reach out to me and I can help direct you in the right manner as far as what's relevant for you and your state and business. So when we talk about successful hires and I talk about interviewing, I always like to say, have a subject matter expert conduct the interview. If you're hiring housekeepers or maintenance techs, don't have your office manager there talking to people. Have your housekeepers, have a maintenance tech there so they can really talk to individuals and give them a realistic job preview of what's going to be happening. I encourage everyone to use the same structure for every interview. That way you're looking at applicants and candidates in the same manner, whether you're interviewing them today or whether you're interviewing them Thursday or Friday. So you want to use that same structure and go through the same steps with everyone. Asking behavioral interview questions. What I mean by this is you want to ask questions that begin with, tell me about a time, tell me how you went about this. When was the last time you encountered this situation? What happened when you were asked to reclean a house? Behavioral questions require individuals to respond with an answer versus a leading question, which would be, it looks here on your resume that you've done cleaning for several companies before. That's right, right? And they would say yes. So a leading question is something where an applicant would answer yes or no. And you want to get into behavioral interview questions so that they can talk about it and you can probe deeper and continue to ask further questions. It's important to establish and maintain rapport. People make sure they feel comfortable, be yourselves. Really pay attention to nonverbal cues. When you talk about communication, body language accounts for more than 50% of what's being said. Start to pay attention to some cues. See if people are paying attention, if they're focused, if they're drifting, if they're kind of shuffling around. You'll learn a lot about your applicants. And then also, I encourage you to be an active listener. And when I talk about active listening, it's not thinking about what you're going to say next. It's really listening to what the individual's saying. Sometimes it helps people to take notes. Sometimes it helps people to ask other questions. But whatever it takes for you to be active, or maybe you mirror their behaviors or you're asking questions. The other piece is when I talk about being an active listener, I like to say listen more than you talk. And if you take the letters from listen and do a word game with them, they also spell silence. So just remember, silence is okay when you're interviewing. You really just want to be able to draw people's attention out. These are key areas that I find, especially working in the vacation rental industry, that are important to probe, especially when you're looking for seasonal. Adaptability. You want to make sure they're adaptable. Can they, maintain their focus and positive attitude under pressure? What's going to happen to them when you shift them and have them move from working in a team to working independently? Or you ask them, you send them to one house, but then you need to move them to another house. How adaptable? Customer service. As we're all learning with all of this keyless entry, sometimes the only individuals that your guests and homeowners interact with are your housekeepers and your maintenance team. So how well do you see them interacting with your guests and homeowners? Communication. How well do they express themselves? Problem solving, and this is a big one because when they're in a home and they're cleaning and they're coming across situations all the time, how adept are they at assessing those situations and working on fixing the small problems? Teamwork. You definitely want to make sure that they're open to assisting other team members. And this is, if you have an inspector come in who's inspecting a house and the housekeeper forgot to do one thing, that the inspector, is open to assisting with that. Dependability, and this is probably the most important piece, is finding ways to ascertain if they're going to be there on time and ready to work. How dependable are they? Because everything in your schedule and your planning requires somebody to be there at that time when you need them the most. So those are 6 areas that I would encourage you to incorporate into your interviews to fully assess their skill sets. Just as a reminder, these are some of the questions you do not want to ask during an interview. We certainly want to stay away from kids and religion. We don't want to be asking about childcare arrangements. A lot of times we require people to have a car. What we want to ask is, do you have reliable transportation? So anyway, the arresting, disabilities, workers' comp, these are things that are questions I've seen on screening interviews from clients that I've worked with. So again, if these are some questions that you're talking about, then make sure that you remove these. And the year you graduate from high school or college, again, that could be an age discrimination piece. And there are ways to ask these questions. It's just not direct in this manner. So now you've gone through, you've found people, you've interviewed them, now you're getting ready to make an offer to them and you want them to join your company. When hiring employees, provide written offer letters, and I really recommend this even for temporary and seasonal employees because they're still going to be your employee. What you want to include are the dates of employment. If you're hiring somebody for the season, maybe you're going to hire them from April 1st through September 15th. Maybe you're hiring someone who's a college student and they're going to start June 15th and work through August 15th. But put those dates in there just so they know that that's the expected length of employment. The type of employment, let them know if they're regular, year-round, full-time, or if it's a seasonal or it's a part-time. List job duties and then clearly list the compensation and benefits. And if you're paying piece rate, I typically encourage people to attach a rate of what the piece rates are so they understand what they'll be paid for what homes that they're cleaning. And then if there are any benefits that are associated with part-time, a lot of states now are moving into paid sick leave. And actually Maryland is the latest one to get on that board. So that's another area to check. Make sure that even if they're temporary workers, if there are any paid time off that's required within your state. If you're making an offer of employment to not employment, but if you're hiring an independent contractor, make sure you provide that agreement for services we talked about earlier. Require proof of workers' comp insurance. And then also make sure that you provide an appendix for what the standard property should look like. What's the standard property appearance? You're not telling them how to clean it, but you're saying this is what our property should look like when you leave. Compensating and incentivizing employees, another key area. Hourly or piece rate. You know, again, this depends on your marketplace and where you're at. Paydays are another one. Weekly, biweekly, monthly. The more frequently you can pay your direct workforce, the more loyal and, you know, that's a huge retention piece. If people are paid weekly, that's going to be an additional help. Some companies do attendance bonuses. You know, they want people to show up and be there. And if they show up and they're on time, they get an additional bonus. Reward and recognition spot bonuses. You know, we're talking about maybe gas cards, cups of coffee, you know, giving them gift cards to Walmarts or to Targets or to stores where you know that they can buy purchases. End of season bonuses. This is a good one for retention. If they stay with you for the season, give them a bonus. Here's something for people that return. Maybe you can give them better days or let them check their days or hours that improve each year they return. Or maybe each year they return, you give them your larger homes or your more high-end homes. Another thing I'm seeing is that companies are starting to find ways to increase compensation for seasonal employees who return each year. Even if you pay piece rate, you could still give them an additional 50 cents per hour or something like that, just from a returning perspective. So there's lots of things that you can do to really incentivize your employees. You have to keep it frequent though, and especially with the reward and recognition, make sure you have a lot of things going on that you're showing your employees how you appreciate them and the work that they're doing for you and your company. So another slide from the survey, and this shares with us, as you can see, most companies, at least 50%, are paying at least once a week. Florida and Alabama are paying, you know, 75% of the time once a week. There are several companies, about 35%, that pay twice a month every 2 weeks, and very few that pay once a month. If you're paying twice a month, I would really encourage you to find a way that you might be able to pay more frequently during the high season. And some companies actually have a seasonal payroll where they pay weekly. So if you are paying twice a month, I would encourage you to look at how you might be able to pay more frequently during your busiest and peak seasons. And then how housekeepers are paid, 60% of companies are paying piece rate, another 20% are hourly, and just a little over 10% do a blend. So for the greatest percentage, we definitely see piece rate as the pay practice. Rewards and recognition, look at this. Florida and Alabama, over 55% provide cash incentives. Companies that are fully staffed, about 25%. Companies that have a return rate of 50%, over 30%. So cash incentives, gift cards are big. Bonuses based on metrics are becoming another key incentive. Where I'm seeing this come into play is with guest comments. You know, when they fill out a survey and they mention people's names, things like that, we're starting to see a lot more incentives working on. Extra time off and logo gear, again, are other areas too. So I want to talk a little bit about onboarding, and there's 4 key points here. Making sure when they come on board, they feel connected and a part of the team really quickly. Introduce them to people, sign them a buddy, somebody who can kind of be a mentor, somebody that they can go to and ask those stupid questions they don't want to ask in front of everybody else, but need to know, like where are the restrooms, or can I use a bathroom in the home? What are some of those things? Certainly provide the training in the home on the basic things they're going to be doing every day. And also give them the tools and resources to really work independently, right? Making sure they have that. So I know, Dirk, you have some great comments to add here as well.
Yeah, so I mean, you mentioned, a housekeeper or a new employee shows up, they're anxious to do a good job. Very few are anxious to do a poor one. And so, I mean, it's a new place, it's a new culture. Where do I park my car? Where do I go to the bathroom at? Can I eat lunch in the home? As I'm cleaning it. Being able to have somebody that they can connect with to be able to assist them to success. Again, it's a new place, and all of us have unwritten rules. All of us know we never ask a certain employee a certain question, and if that's not told to the new employee, they're going to ask that question to that person, and then the person blows up at them, and it's just not a good spot. So anything we can do to assist the housekeeper or the new employee to feel welcome and to know what the unwritten cultural rules are only aids in helping them feel welcome and also helping them succeed.
Right. And our, onboarding goes on. It's not just a one-day thing. It's constantly. So by assigning that buddy and mentor, that really gives people another peace of mind. So let's talk about, how do you retain people year over year? How do you get to having 50+% of your seasonal workers return? You want to socialize and get to know your employees. It's key. People want to be a part of your business. 70% of employees say having friendships at work are key. It generates a positive influence. They're productive. They're happy. They like the people they work with. And that's what I hear over and over and over when I'm traveling and visiting your businesses. People love the people they're working with. The next one is sending birthday cards. Birthdays are really important, and especially mine. I tell my family. And actually, I like my birthday the whole month. But when you can recognize somebody individually, especially with the hand signed, and I call snail mail the cards to their home. And what you can also do is, when you're sitting around during management meetings or you've got your management team together, go out and just buy a box of mixed cards for birthdays, anniversaries, sympathies, babies, all of that. Have everybody sign the card, and then when those occasions occur, you've got cards ready to just send off. And it means a lot. It also means a lot to the individual spouse or significant other when they see you're getting something from a company that you worked for a couple of months. Invite them to seasonal parties and celebrations. This is another key. Lay them off with the intent to rehire. Let them know our season's ending. We're going to lay you off, but gee, Sue, we want you to come back. Expect to hear from us in March because we want to rehire you. You know, that's another area that people are really focusing on. Anytime you get an opportunity, remind them why they loved working for you. Maybe it was they came to work for you for the summer to earn extra cash to take a trip to the Bahamas. You know, remind them of these things. And these are key things that the more you can, I call them touch points, try and find a way to incorporate a touch point to your seasonal workers once a month. Now, here are retention strategies that came out of the survey. And again, you can see people with greater than 50% return rate lay individuals off with the intent to rehire them. They invite them to seasonal parties. They send them communications and updates. So they're treating them like a part of the team. And that's what you want to do, because it will really help your business when you come around to the next season, and it will help drive their engagement. So a couple of things for you as key takeaways from today. Really think about hiring for attitude. Find the people with the right attitude, who are the right fit for your culture, who have the right motivation, and then train them for the job. Workforce planning. Try to find out and understand who you need and when. And don't forget to account for turnover. I see that as a big piece. Make sure you understand the implications of hiring independent contractors and what could happen with misclassifications. Find ways to make it easy for people to apply for jobs with you, right? You want people to find you very easily amongst everyone else. Implement employee referrals. Pay your seasonal workers frequently. And again, if you're paying every 2 weeks, if there's a way that you can run a second payroll during this high season, you probably would find a great benefit to that. Use incentives and spot bonuses to drive productivity and engagement. It's huge. And then do what you can to become that employer of choice in your area. Stand out. What's going to differentiate you from all your competitors down the street? I know we took up most of the hour, and I certainly want to thank you all for your time. And we do have a couple of minutes left. So if anyone has any questions, Dirk and I are certainly available to answer those. If you want copies of the presentation, feel free to email me. Also, happy to answer any questions you might have via email as well. So thank you again. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, you're welcome. So glad you're here. Appreciate it. So glad you are here. So Karen says, great job. Thanks so much for the information. Thank you, Karen. Also, Sue, there's a question here about since we on the application, there's no longer an opportunity to check if they have felonies. What would be a good question to ask during the interview process if they do have felonies, since obviously if we ask that the wrong way, we'll end up in an orange jumpsuit on the side of the road, and that's just not what I want to be.
No, absolutely. What you can do during an interview, especially if you're doing background checks, is let the applicants know that you'll be conducting background checks, and you can ask them, have you ever been convicted of a misdemeanor or a felony? And you can ask that question. What you want to do, though, is be very careful with what the reply is, because if somebody, a lot of times people have misdemeanors. A good example is maybe they got arrested in their 20s for smoking pot or something like that, right? Is that going to be relevant to them being in the home? Is that going to be differential? You want to look for things that are clearly shoplifting, fraud, credit card things, or maybe sexual harassment, those kinds of things. But just let people know. You can certainly ask that, but you have to verify it. If you ask the question and decide not to hire them based on their answer, you need to make sure that you do a background check. So if you're not doing background checks, though, I would not ask the question, because it's irrelevant, because you can't verify it.
Ah, I see. So for those that aren't doing background checks for housekeepers, that would be something they need to strongly consider, as this checking the box takes hold in the States.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, excellent. Well, Sue, thank you so much for your time today. To the attendees, thank you for sharing part of your day with us. And if you have any questions, please reach out to Sue. Her email's there on the screen, or you can certainly reach out to VRHP, and we are certainly happy to help in any way we can. Thank you very
All
much,
right.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. Bye-bye now.